because I'll use this if I have to, but it's pretty cold.
You know. Anyway.
The thing about being an actor, well, if I pull this kind of close like this, the thing about being an actor, and I do a lot of theater, is that the first thing you do when you're an actor is that you get into a room and you try to get to the borders of this room so that everybody gets included. Those of you who are sitting in the outer dark, beyond the pale, as they say in Ireland, you know, I can't help it. But those of you who want to come on and get in closer to the campfire, those people I can't help. Anyway, I suppose I should give you just a brief rundown on what I do. I'm a car mechanic from Winnetka, Illinois, and I've been working on Volkswagen's Wait, no, I'm sorry. I'm splitting on my personalities again, confused. Did anyone ever see the LA Law that I live with the multiple personalities? Yeah. So, yeah, be careful because it could happen anytime. It sometimes does. I've been an actor for a long time. My first film was a film with Clint Eastwood called Dirty Harry. It was the original Dirty Harry. Thank you. Which, yeah, great. And he shot that right several times. And lived to tell the tale. A bunch of stuff to come along the way. Things like Liberace. I'm thinking of things that I like a lot. Remember Him. And this is the young crowd. This is an older crowd. Yeah. A bunch of stuff. I'm trying to think of something that would be interesting here. Hellraiser. My first Hellraiser, which was one of the kinkiest movies I've ever done. Kinky stuff going on. That was a great effort. Working with Clive Barker, who actually directed that as well as wrote it. And it was the first film he ever directed. The man has an amazingly febrile, sick, wonderful imagination. Rather than me trying like really bad, running down my career because it's sort of like it runs together in my mind. It's probably always bad. Well, no, I mustn't say that. Children, you have to be very careful. But I would just assume if you have any questions about any of this stuff that I've been involved in, I must admit, I make a very important confession. I am a neophyte to the Star Trek world. I was never a Trekker until I started working on it. And now I've become immersed in a way that I cannot believe. I've been trying to catch up with it, watching, and I don't know if they're doing the same thing here, but in LA at 11 o'clock, they're rerunning the original. And so I've been catching up on that. And it's really, truly amazing because now I see all these storylines that I'm involved with Deep Space Nine. Most of them, like the alternate universe, originated with the original Star Trek, which was an episode called Mirror Mirror. And when I did that alternate universe episode last year, which by the way was extraordinarily successful, which is why yes. And actually, just a couple weeks ago, we just finished a sequel of that. It's not really a sequel, it's even weirder than the last. Wait till you see Nana. She is so amazing. She's wonderful. But anyway, my character, the bad Kira and the bad Garrick are sort of joined at the hip in this one, and very one wonders what they're really up to. Anyway, so don't expect anything from me that all of you here know 10 times more than I do about this world. But I can talk about that. My involvement with Deep Space Nine and Garrick, I can talk till the cows come home, because as I say, I really do love this character. This character, for me, is one of the most... If somebody told me 25 years ago when I got out of drama school, whenever it was, that I was going to play a guy in a rubber mask and a rubber suit in some outer space show, and love it, I would have told them they were smoking very bad stuff. Really. But I do love it. I really do. And anything else about what I've done? Hellraiser, Dirty Harry, whatever. Yes, sir. One thing, you gotta help me out. You really gotta, project.
Really talk loudly.
We have microphones. Hello? Okay. Do you have more fun doing a movie like Hellraiser or one like Dirty Harry? Yeah, it's a good question. The thing about Dirty Harry that was great, Dirty Harry was my very first film. And going to Hollywood and working with Clint Eastwood and doing that character was it was a dream come true. And the fact that it was kind of the character was the first character of its kind, someone who was really, truly, psychotically out there and crazy, really crazy. I thought, well, yeah, that's what being a heavy is all about. So, and that was like a once in a lifetime experience. By the time I got to Hellraiser, I realized that, things like Dirty Harry didn't come along a lot. But when Hellraiser came along, because I got a chance to play two characters, a good brother and a bad brother, that was thrilling in a whole other sense. But, I love to work, but when the characters are really good, of course, what the hell, there was a question over here. All right, that question's gone. Yes, sir.
How do you go through the casting process? How long did it take?
For what? For what show?
For Deep Space Nine.
Oh, the casting process, they're very thorough with their casting process, like Star Trek people. It's amazing, because when you go there, you actually really have to give them the character. There can't be any ambiguity at all. You walk in the door, you do the audition, and it's either yes or no. So if you don't have a beat on the character, if you don't have choices for that character that make a lot of sense, and that makes a lot of sense to the producers, then forget it. It happened with Garrett. Well, for instance, I was down to the last three people to test for Odo. It was Renee, myself, and another actor. Renee is magnificent. Renee is much better as Odo than I ever would be, and they give to the right person. Because when I walked in there, I didn't have a bead on Odo. When they gave me Garrett, I walked in there and I knew where Garrett was. I had a bead on him. And the great thing about that is that once they hire you, they don't bother you anymore. They figure, okay, he knows how to do it. That was the audition, so they let you do it, which is not the case in a lot of situations. Yes, sir. Yeah. The question is Garrett a member of the Obsidian Order or not? Well, you're really going to find out. There's a two-parter that's coming up. I don't know when it's going to. There's a whole bunch of them. I just finished doing that. Start next week. There's a two-parter that we shot where Odo and Garrett get together, and there's a whole relationship that they create, in which it's almost sort of like a Sherlock Holmes Watson duo. All right, I'm not going to give anything away by saying yes to this question. I have to be careful about what I like, because I don't want to be a spoilsport. Yes, ma'am.
Was it contemplated from the beginning that Garrett would be a continuing character? And how do you feel you had input into making that character evolve and change?
Yeah, good question. When I was hired for Garrett, it was not clear that Garrett was going to be a recurring character. They told me he was going to be a recurring character, but they wanted to see if there was any chemistry, I'm sure, between Siddig El Fadil, who plays Dr. Bashir, and myself. And the moment Sid and I did the first scene, the very first scene in the very first episode that we did together, we knew exactly what to do. It clicked. It were two actors who knew, we've had the same training. We went to the same drama school in England, but it's more than that. It doesn't always happen. I think as soon as the producers saw that, they realized that this was something that was going to continue. And the second part of your question is like what I've done to contribute to this character is that's the other thing that's good about these writers and these producers of the show. They are amazing. I mean, the writers, I think, are the best. They are truly the best in terms of any show that I've ever worked on. And this year, I don't know if you agree with me, I think this year, Deep Space Nine has finally found its level. It's finally found its mission, you know? And I know that there are those of you out there who are upset because Deep Space Nine does not involve getting in a ship and going someplace, but I respectfully submit that you're missing the boat, pardon the expression, because Deep Space Nine itself is just as much of a metaphor. It's just as much of a microcosm for our society as a ship that goes to places and stops and has adventures. Anyway, I digress. The writers, if you make a very strong decision, very strong choice to take your character in a certain direction, of course, you're always limited by the script, by the writing. But if you make that choice and you go in that direction, they appreciate that. And if you make it work, they will then help you and write you more and more in that direction. The mystery, that oddball kind of civility and sophistication that Gary has, that almost reptilian half smile, all of that behavior I brought to it, and they liked it so much they just kept writing and taking it more and more and more in that direction. Yes, ma'am. Which of the episodes that I've done so far, which one did I like the best and why? You know what we can do? Probably what we can do is that, all right, say he's the next one, and then I'll pick two so that you can get to.
We have one more person up there.
Okay, great.
You can follow.
Excellent, thanks. So, yeah, if you can get somebody and just tell me, I've got to get you. My favorite episode was The Wire. I'm sure. And I'll tell you, it's not only one of my favorite episode of Deep Space Nine, it's one of my favorite episodes of anything I've ever done. It's up there with the LA Law that I did. It's up there with the Twilight Zone where I played JFK, which is also near and dear to my heart. But The Wire, and The Wire is exemplary of the kind of script that they write too. Basically, it's a script about addiction. And but not just addiction. What is behind addiction, and certainly behind Garrick's addiction, was his loneliness. Does this not sound familiar? One of the reasons perhaps why we become addicted to something, our alienation, our feeling that we are in the wrong place. I should be over there. I live on that planet. Why am I on this planet? I am not in the place where I should be. I mean, it was an amazing episode. And there's a couple scenes in the middle of it that's some of the finest acting, I say humbly, that I've ever been involved with, because Sid and I, as far as I was concerned, were just on the mark. I appreciate it. Yeah. You can talk in there.
Two questions for you. First, with all the makeup you have on, do you ever have an allergic reaction to it or anything like that?
With all the makeup that I have, do I have an allergic reaction? It's heavy because we work long hours. 15, 16 hours a day is the rule rather than the exception. So after about 15 or 16 hours in that makeup, my energy just starts to draw. I mean, it just pulled right out of me. And sometimes if I'm working, several days in a row, my face gets as raw as hamburger meat. It's rough, yeah.
So there's nothing you can put on?
A lot of aloe vera, that's all I do. And what's your second question?
The second question is, on that scene, why are they going to have you putting on the makeup to with Michael Dorn? Because I have not seen it yet.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Well, Michael Dorn, when he speaks, there's a clip in the show where they show him putting makeup on him having a line. When are they going to do that with you?
Well, I guess when they make me a regular, that's, that's... Yeah, okay, yeah. Come back.
Okay.
Okay, excuse me. I'm ready. It's okay.
Getting back to the earlier question, when you audition, Garrick is a very enigmatic character. I think a lot of people have their own take on him. I was wondering what your take is on him. What's your interpretation of the character? Where do you think he's coming from?
Where do I think he's coming from?
Yeah, that's just, what beat did you have on him when you said you went in there?
Yeah.
You said he's something I think everyone has a different idea of.
You know, the thing is, the one thing they did tell me is that Deep Space Nine was built by Cardassians. And Cardassians were not very popular. They were kind of like the Nazis of outer space, you know, the way it was described to me. And the way they treated Bajorans, and that Deep Space Nine was, in certainly a large part, it was a slave labor camp. So the fact that there's this one guy, it's almost like if Adolf Eichmann had decided to stay in Jerusalem and live in a neighborhood. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that, but someone who's associated with Adolf Eichmann. It's a very bizarre situation. So the first thing, when you're an actor, you ask yourself, why does a person like this choose to live among people who hate him? And you remember, in that episode, The Wire, that's one of the things that really came out, was the fact that he suffered. He suffered from the fact that he lived in a place where the majority of people hated him, or hated who he was, not knowing who he was. So I asked myself that question, and I don't have an answer for that, because that's a plot situation, and the writers still haven't told me what he's really doing there. But how do you behave when you're in a situation like that? You don't go walking around like Gul Dukat, you know, with your gonads clanking, you know, and, you know, I mean, obviously you have to be kind of cool. You have to be sort of like behind the veil. You have to be kind of gracious and deferential and almost courtly. You can't go around, you know, pushing people out of the way. So that's as close as I can come to. Now, but when I ask myself that question, and that starts bringing up behavior, that's interesting to me, because basically, Garrick is all about subtext. And those of you who are actors here, or those of you who are writers, who write for actors, know that subtextual situations are the most interesting situations to play. In other words, where the truth lies underneath the surface. And with Garrick, obviously, is there anybody here who believes literally what Garrick says? Is there? Because if there is, I'd sell you a bridge in a second like that. No, you don't, because the truth of Garrick is underneath the text, the subtext. And that's where the behavior comes from. The veiled, the lidded eyes, the reptilian behavior, you know, the constant expression of just looking at you, smiling, thinking your thoughts, taking, you know, your time with a person, actually sometimes playing with this person, but never letting that person know what your game plan is, what's going on. Yes, sir, go ahead. Yeah. I can hear you. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
The chemistry between you and Mark Alamo is also equally as said. How do you, what I'm trying to say is, do you approach him differently, do you approach Garrett differently when you're talking to Carter than when you're talking to Bashir? Because there's a difference in tone when he's dealing with one or the other.
Right. The question is that the gentleman likes the chemistry between Garrick and Gul Dukat. And the question is does Garrick treat Dukat differently than he treats other people, relate to Dukat differently, behave with Dukat differently, and he does. Basically, in the episode called Civil Defense, when there was, and this is the beginning, they are going to do more with the Garrick Dukat thing, because I'll give another little piece away. At one point in that two-parter with Odo, Garrick is in a position where he thinks that he can get rid of Dukat, and the idea appeals to him. Yeah, he's very, in that episode of Civil Defense, when Dukat comes down into the ops room, when the whole station's gone dead, and starts strutting around and saying, well, yeah, sure, I know how to fix this, I know exactly. And then, of course, because he's such an arrogant idiot, you know, he can't fix anything. But he struts around, you know, he's flirting with Kira and so forth. And this drives Garrick crazy, because it's all territorial. Cardassians are very territorial. They have a very big reptilian-sized brain. And so then it's all about borders with them. Somebody steps over the border, it's like, a rattlesnake. Suddenly, what are you doing here? What? Get back, that's all. And as far as Garrick is concerned, Deep Space Nine is Garrick's territory. As a Cardassian, he owns this place. He's the only one there. Suddenly, this guy shows up and starts, putting some moves on the women and impressing people with his, So yes, indeed. And that's a very ripe relationship that's going to grow.
And do you see yourself as a trekker now? And if so, how did you come to this self-realization?
Well, yeah, I am. How can you not be? I mean, I'm in it. I'm immersed in the mythology, totally. I'm part of it now, part of the family. And also, I'll tell you how I came to the self-realization is because of the fans. I have never, ever in my life gotten, not me personally, it's really the character, gotten the kind of mail that I'm getting. I got great mail for Dirty Harry when Liberace came out. I've been getting mail, all my life, but not like this. And the producers are aware of this. This is the other thing about the whole Trek phenomenon that blows me away, is that it is not a sedentary phenomenon. You people are not sedentary couch potato fans. You write, you get on the email, you write your own fiction, you have your own, it's extraordinary. And the producers are aware of this, I'm sure you know this. And if there are things, and if you're not aware of this, you really should be, because if there are things you like and things you don't like, you let these people know and they pay attention, which is the reason Garrick is coming back more and more and more and more. And I've never had an experience like this before in my life. Never, ever. Usually it's like you get in front of a camera, you shoot the sucker, they say cut, print, you go home, you cash your check, and you look for your next job, and that's it. This is an ongoing scene here. Blows me away.
Hello?
Yeah.
With Hellraiser,
Yeah.
and the special effects and how you kind of got mutilated and stuff, like how did that feel? And how would one get into something like that?
And
what kind of people worked on it? Where did they learn? Do you have any idea?
The Hellraiser, you're referring to the end when all the hooks go into my body, and then the hooks, and then, yes, it's the most extraordinary thing ever. I actually hated that a lot. I really hated that as much as I've hated anything. But I'll tell you, when I saw it, because it was the first time I'd ever done something like that, I realized why I went through that kind of pain and suffering, because it was extraordinary to see. And also, I was working with these brilliant English special effects people, and they also were pretty amazing. People who worked on Alien and stuff. Yeah, they were great. You have some nails?
Right here to your left.
Thank you.
Andrew, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And my original question actually has been covered. I usually ask how much of the character you're given and how much you fill in. Of course, that's been addressed. But I like what you've done with the character, what the rest of the cast and the writers have done with the other characters. We've seen them grow. We've seen Kira go from, battling with everybody every time she turns around to exercising a little more control. Sitting his characters a little less bright-eyed, but a little less dedicated and enthusiastic. And I've defended this show. You referred to the concept, well, they're not going out in a spaceship and something, I don't like that. But they were at a major crossroads, and I thought of one of my favorite movies, Casablanca. And then you guys went and did the Casablanca episode, and I loved that. It was so very well done. I just want to say thank you for that.
Oh, listen, my pleasure. Thank you. That was a lot of fun, actually. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Prior to The Wire, the writers had built up the fact that Garrick was very unhappy living on Deep Space Nine in these circumstances. But then after The Wire, they seem to have dropped that storyline. And are they coming back to it? Yeah. The two-parter with Odo is actually that's what it's all about. And it has an amazing dating moment, which I'm not even going to begin to tell anybody because it's really it's a wonderful two-parter, but it totally addresses that. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Oh, my makeup takes about 2.5 hours. The Cardassian is the longest makeup. The Ferengi and Odo, the Changeling makeup is about half an hour shorter. And then it's about 2.5 hours to put on and about an hour to get out. And believe me, one of the happiest moments in my life, it's actually, I gotta admit, even better than sex when I get out of that makeup, you know? Oh, free at last, free. God almighty. Yes.
How many more episodes will be appearing in this season?
This season I'll be in 4 more. Yeah.
What's your take on Voyager? Do you feel that there's any kind of competition? I mean, by the way, it happens to be on in New York, same exact time.
Who's responsible for that dumbbell? Unbelievable. I mean, somebody's egos are getting in the way. The take on Voyager is, you know, every one of these shows, it takes a while to get off the ground. I think it took 2 years for Deep Space Nine to find itself. It's a hit and miss because you've got all the elements are new. I mean, with any show, the elements of the actors coming together, learning about each other, writers coming together, learning to write for the actors, but then writing for, and then there's also the thing with Deep Space Nine. There was always a problem. I come back to this. Deep Space Nine is a darker show than any of the other Star Treks. Certainly than the first. I think certainly more than the Next Generation, and I think more than Voyager. It's a darker show. There's a lot more moral. It's a universe of greater moral ambiguity. Everybody. That's why when we do that alternate universe, I think it's so successful. Is that because I think fans will accept the dark side of those characters. And every one of those characters, you were talking about Kira and Kira's militancy. I mean, isn't that always a problem for a woman who stands up for herself and makes her demands? She's always accused of being a militant, a red stocking, you know, and they even get down to like even more ugly and derogatory descriptions of that kind of woman. The whole thing about Cisco, who, by the way, I think they finally this year learned to write for Avery. Avery is one of the most powerful actors I've ever met in my life. They finally have learned how to write for Avery. Avery there's an episode he has that's coming up with that's all with his son. And he and his son build this extraordinary ship that's a replica of an old ship, and they take this trip. It's one of the most beautiful scripts I have ever read in my life. And of course Avery, because Avery has that strength. You're not going to get Julie Andrews out of Avery Brooks. You're not going to get Julie Andrews out of Nana Visitor. And I think with all of the actors that they've chosen, and a lot of these actors I've worked with before on stage, like Renee and Armin, most of these actors I've not only known before, but I've worked with before. They are extraordinary stage actors. And if you know anything about stage, you know that in stage you are trained. You are trained to bring it all up. Not just the nice stuff, not just the light stuff, but bring it all up, because that's true. That's real. And that's what I think one of the problems may. And there are great actors on that. Kate Mulgrew, who I did a soap opera with for years, where she and I played brother and sister Ryan's Hope, for those of you with the memories of elephants. I worked with her actually on a bunch of stuff. Robert Beltran, Robert Picardo is one of the best actors. I mean, who plays the doctor. I mean, superb. So, yeah. Now, do you have someone over there, sir?
Between the time you get a script and the time you have to start filming it, how much time is that?
between the time I get a script and I start filming it, it's horrifying how little time you have. But the advantage is that I know the character of Garrett. The hard thing is that when you're a guest star and you're just doing one Deep Space Nine, and suddenly there's a knock on the door on a Thursday night at 11:30 p.m. and they say, "Okay, here's the script. Be there at 5 in the morning," and that's no exaggeration. No exaggeration. So you're up till 3 trying to learn the lines, and the lines is just part of it. I mean, you don't even know what the character is, but you're just trying to learn the lines just for survival's sake, so that when you get in front of a camera, they don't shoot you for being a jerk.
Okay. Now the lights go out, cameras off, the makeup's off.
Yeah.
What do you do to keep back and relax? What does all the other guys do? Hang out? What do you do?
Well, you know, the hours are so long that basically the hours are so long. You sleep a lot when you have time. You sleep as much as you can, and you try to pay the bills and feed the cat and do the gardening and do stuff that other people do. I mean, it's amazing what happens. But then when you have the 2 or 3 months off, then it's like you wonder, geez, what am I going to do now? I don't have any place to go.
I'd like to know if you have any upcoming projects besides direct projects that we should be looking for you in, and also, do you have a dream project that you'd like to do?
Oh boy. I do a lot of theater, so the only upcoming projects I'm doing now is theater back in Los Angeles. A dream project, that's a very good question. There are a couple of Shakespearean roles. I'm trying to convince Avery to do Othello, and I play Iago, and Avery is half interested. If I can get him the other halfway, then I'll be a very happy person. That's a dream project. And also, it's mainly theater. I'm also getting into directing, and so there are projects that I'm developing as a director. I also write, which is another. I just finished the film script, which I've got out there, and God willing, somebody will pick it up and make it. It's the life of an actor. It's you do what you can and you keep chugging along, and you have your dreams. You really do, and most of them burn and crash, but you try not to get too upset by that and too hardened. Because the business it's like anybody else's business. It's enough sometimes to make Jesus weep. Go ahead. Is that his hand up there? Go ahead. Belt it out. Talking there so everybody can hear the question.
Some of the actors for Star Trek have said they found making restricting, others found it liberating. As an actor, how's it work for you? And two, since you did say you do want to write, you do want to direct, do you have any interest in doing either of those things for Star Trek?
Yeah. The second question, yes, I do. And the first question, that's a very good question. Some people find that they make up the mask liberating. I find the mask liberating too, because it's hard. It's a hard thing to describe why, but basically, is that I have my eyes and I have my voice with Garrett, and my body. That's what I have, and that's what I need. I have to be very conscious of. That's what I have to use to communicate. Now, one of the problems, you see, the mask can also kill you. If you're an inexperienced actor, which happens a lot of times, I think you'll agree with me, those of you who watch these shows enough, you'll see a young actor getting on there and who doesn't understand what it means to be in a mask like that, and they're playing it like a character out of Melrose Place, and they die. They die, not because they're bad actors, simply because they're inexperienced and they don't understand about... The only word I could ever use for this is style. Style. To be able to take your presence and to project it so that it goes out there if you're a stage actor. But then if you're in front of a camera, it becomes a different problem, doesn't it? Because you're not trying to project into the last row of an audience. You have a camera. So what it is, how do you use your style for the camera? Well, it comes in the eyes. And the voice, and how you use your voice, and how you modulate, how you bring it down, and how you bring it up, how you feel, and in your eyes, what's behind the eyes, what are you thinking, the intensity. And I find I am liberated with a mask with that, because once I put on the mask, I realize I have no choice, man. I gotta rock and roll, or I don't have a job. But it's a good question, because I love talking about that stuff. I mean, the craft of it all, it's exciting. There's someone right there. Oh, you guys are. All right.
There's a similarity between the character Q in the Next Generation and Garrett, in that they both seem to have all the answers and have a superiority complex to some degree. And Q did appear on Deep Space Nine in one episode. Do you think that it would be a good interaction to have Garrett and Q appear in an episode of Deep Space Nine? How do you think it would go?
I think it would be great, and it's a very good question. It's a very good observation, too, because I have a friend, Gail Stever, who is, and I mean this in the best sense of the expression, she is an academic Trek. She writes lots of stuff about Trek and so forth. And she feels that characters, and she deals with archetypes, and that each character is an archetype of a part of our consciousness. Some of this may sound like mumbo jumbo to you, but I believe this. And she feels that characters like Garrett and Q are the archetype of the magician. The magician, is someone who presents you with appearances and manipulates the appearances and says, now you see this? No, now you see that. No, now you see this. Meanwhile, the magician is operating on an agenda, has an agenda underneath the surface. Once again, the subtext. And both those characters have an agenda that we don't know about. I don't know about. And if John Delancey were here, I'm sure that John Delancey would tell you that no one ever told him who Q is and what Q is about. And I think it would be great for Garrick and Q to get together for two reasons. Because it'd be a wonderful, very witty exchange, interesting, and also because I've worked with John before, and I love working with John. He's a lot of fun. And the character that she's created out of Q, that's John. That's John's sense of humor. That's John's energy and enthusiasm coming out. Yes. Right behind you. Nope. It's on the other side. Yeah, right. Oh, good. Yes.
Do you ever get recognized as Garrett on the street?
Very rarely. And when I do, it blows me away. I mean, this is a person who's been paying attention. Yeah. But very rarely, which is nice. I like that. Yeah. Because like after Dirty and Harry, I mean, I'd walk down the street and people thought I was, the slasher or something, or I'd just been let out of, I don't know what, when people would clear a path for me. No one ever gave me any crap, though, I must say, after Dirty and Harry. They don't know what a wuss I really am. So I'd walk through the worst neighborhoods, and, people were okay with me. Hey, good to see you, crazy. Yes.
You mentioned that you have a script out now. Can you tell us a little about the screenplay you've written?
It's very different from this. It's a psychological mystery thriller that takes place in Manhattan, and a woman who's the leading character is a woman who has multiple personalities, and I can't tell you any more than that because we'd be here all night. It goes in and out. It's kind of convoluted, but I like it. It's out printing of my fevered imagination. Yeah.
One of your favorite projects that I've ever seen you with was an old Twilight Zone called Profile in Silver.
JFK.
How do you approach playing a historical character who's that close to our time and that enormous our imagination and everything we see and know is very different from yourself? How do you approach that?
Well, John Hancock, the director, when he hired me for that, I thought, why didn't he hire me? I can do a Kennedy accent. I'm a New Englander. But I didn't see myself as anything like him, and I'm not, really. But, so I was freed from the responsibility of trying to be like John Kennedy. And so I just really tried to I just found an essence of the man that I liked. And it's Irish, which I am, and it's New England, which I am, and It's competitive in the best sense, but it's competitive and also with a social conscience. And in going, that's one of the times when I didn't rely, obviously, I can't rely on makeup there. I mean, I could just look very dissimilar. But the essence, playing the essence of that character pulled me through. And which is why it's one of my favorites, because it showed me that I can feel something. And if I try to find I don't know the word. If I can try to get into someone's feeling, then that is as important as having the same hairline or the same nose and so forth.
Yes, I find it amazing that people don't recognize you because your eyes are so intense. When you play a character who is insane, your eyes show it. And when you play Garrett, it's like you're walking around with this veil of disdain, and it shows in your eyes. Do you work with this? I mean, you stand there in front of the mirror and just like roll your eyes up and down.
Well, I have to work at it, but it's not so much, although I love telling stuff like this, there's a swarm of East Indian theater called Kathakali. Kathakali has for their actors, they have a very rigorous training program. They have these great eye exercises for their actors. When I started doing Garrick, I started doing these eye exercises because I realized my eyes have to be strong. But that's just a physical exercise. Where the work really comes from is the thinking. Garrick is the most intelligent. I mean, I've never played someone as brilliant as Garrick before. And in order to do that, so that people believe it, you have to be thinking. You just can't stand in front of the camera and have nothing behind your eyes and be caught, dead with an empty head. And which happens a lot of times to actors who figure, all I have to do is just kind of look pretty and I'll just get up here and just sort of like wow them with my magnificent masculine charisma. And it's, and you look at it from the other side from the television or the screen, you think, boy, that guy is nowhere. Good hairline, though. We've had quite a few losses in our pet family, but we have one old cat left. My wife Irene, who is here, she doesn't want any more animals after this one dies because she suffers too much when they die. We all suffer, but she doesn't want that kind of suffering anymore. I don't blame her. But yeah. Yeah.
Some of the recent episodes are showing us Kardashians more as real people in a sense. Ducat talks about his son, Second Skin, where Kira is involved in this family type situation. Do you see Garrett showing us a little bit more of that side of his character? Or the softer side? Is there a woman in the future?
Well, that's a good question, because, basically, Star Trek at its best defies stereotypes. And it tries, and I think this was Roddenberry's original premise, wasn't it? To get away from racial, sexist stereotypes and to present other groups of people and not just the surface of them. At the beginning, yes, Cardassians, because of what they did, were reprehensible, were frightening, forbidding, cold-blooded, murderous, all of that. Just as those of us, and believe me, my father was killed in the Second World War by Germans, that you figure, well, all Germans must be warlike and awful people because of concentration camps and so forth. And you've come to find out that that's a really dangerous way of looking at the world and looking at other people. And I think that essentially what they're doing now with Cardassians is what Roddenberry wanted all along, was that you get past the surface of people's. Yes, there are macho, murderous, reptilian-brained idiots like Ducat and the ones who are constantly torturing Chief O'Brien and others. But you know, that's not all there is to it. Like the one in Second Skin, my friend Larry Pressman, who played Gilmore, the man who thought that Kira was his long-lost daughter. I mean, it was absolutely touching. Touching. And then he has one moment when he realizes it's not his daughter, that she could cry. When he realizes he's never going to see his daughter again. I mean, it gets past these stereotypes, which is why I have become that's the main reason probably why I've become a Trekkie. Because there is a morality in this universe. I'm going to digress a bit, because I know my time is coming to an end, and I want to talk about the relationship between Bashir and Garrick. And Sid is going to be here tomorrow. He's actually filming today. He would have been here tonight, but he's filming today. You think, what is the exchange? What's the exchange in the relationship between Garrick and Bashir? I mean, does anybody have an answer to that? I mean, a what? Curiosity on Bashir's part, and probably on both their parts, curious about who the other is, yeah?
Fascination more like.
Well, that's more fascination, more like? Garrick indeed needs somebody to talk to. But in the moral sense, because if you think of it, all relationships on at least one level, all relationships are moral relationships. And there's a moral transaction that happens, and that we give to each other something that we need to learn. We're mirrors for each other. And that we react, and if we're hit, and if we're really into the relationship, we take away from this relationship, and the other person does too. And with Garrick comes from these people. And I've made this, believe me, I've made this choice, and I think it's a correct choice. About, you think of we have what they call the tripartite brain. There are three parts of our brain. The oldest part of our brain is the reptilian part of our brain, which is about borders, boundaries, aggression. It's about a lot of other things, but I'm speaking of it in terms of Garrick. And I think that Cardassians, that part of their brain is very well developed. They see borders, they see boundaries, they see things as appearances as they are, and they mark them out for themselves. And which means that if they decide that they want something, they mark it out and they go for it. Then there's Bashir. Bashir, who is a doctor. What does a doctor do? A good doctor takes the Hippocratic oath. Not the hypocritical oath, which a lot of them unfortunately take. He is supposedly someone who is versed in compassion, with empathy, with caring for others. Garrick is politically astute. Garrick has been around the political barn a few times. He's a Machiavellian character. He knows all about the palace intrigues. He knows who's up, who's down, who's in, who's out. He knows about power. He knows how people want power. He knows how people manipulate people for power. He knows how much power means to people, and how power is as much of a drug as anything else. I leave it for you, but I mean, it's pretty clear what that exchange is. That's why that relationship, for me, is the core of it all. Why those scenes with the doctor are my favorite scenes to do. And that's saying something, because those other scenes are thanks. Now, I don't know how I am. Somebody should tell me about how I am with time, so I'm good. I'm okay, good. I don't want to, and believe me, I'm sure you people figure I've had enough of this yo-yo. I'm not just go.
Two things. First of all, about what you were just talking about, the way I see it, I think Bashir, because of his innocence that he started out with when the character started, is genuinely interested in Cardassians and sees Garrick as a source of information, however much trouble he has to go through to get a scrap of information out of Garrick. And I think what Garrick gets from the doctor is really two things. The first, and probably the most important, is he likes to have someone dancing on a string. He likes to have someone that he can manipulate and give them some information and see which way they zig or zag. And also, Bashir is part of the core cast, the core officer core.
But
it is a pipeline of information.
But think of this. For me, the most important thing that Garrett gets from Bashir is learning that other people have a soul, and that there is such a thing as empathy and compassion. And what Bashir did for Garrett in the wild, and Garrett couldn't understand it. Let me die. Get out of my... What are you doing here? Let me die. And he attacks him. He grabs him. At one point, he's trying to choke him to death. And Bashir exhibits what? Unconditional love and acceptance of his friend. I mean, that's where it's at. That's where it's at. And that's where it's at for Garrett, and that's where it's at for Bashir. That to me is that gives the credibility, the emotional credibility to that relationship, and why it is an invaluable relationship, and why the writers keep it going. I'm sure that's the reason.
The other question I had was, no one's brought this up yet, and I don't know if you want to talk about it, but the N-word, Mantis. How do you feel about the work on that show and its quiet cancellation?
Okay, this is a good one, because this is a great Mantis. Mantis, the show with Carl Lonely, who is, I feel badly for Carl. And I'll tell you why I feel badly for Carl, is they wrote terribly for that show. As opposed to, as well as they write for Deep Space Nine, that's as badly as they wrote for Mantis. And I've said this before, and I've told them, actually, the last time I did the show, I said, I know, if you want me back here, and I guess you want me back here because you're letting this scumbag live, why don't you write a good script? And the guy said, well, I said, I'm not putting you down. It's just that this is hard to play. It's hard to play bad scripts. It really is. So, I'm sorry for Carl. I'm not sorry that show went south. Because they really blew it. They had a great role model with Carl Lonely playing that lead. And they didn't run with it. They didn't go any place with it. Because he's one of the most engaging, you want to talk about empathic people. The man is all soul. And he's a very good person. And they just never really wrote for him.
Andrew, can we do one more question over there?
Sure can.
Good evening. With the directing and with the script writing that you've done, they both seem like ways of getting other people to express emotions. Have you ever tried doing any actor workshops yourself, teaching those?
No, yeah. I mean, I've only taught acting. I've certainly never taught. I'm in no position to teach writing and directing, because basically I see myself as very much on the learning grade with that one. But I've only taught acting, and I'll tell you the most enjoyable acting teaching that I've done is with children. My wife and I ran a school for several years where we worked with children in the various integrated arts program and with acting, and that was much more exciting than working with people who think that they already know it all. It's really unfortunate, when you're working with people who want to be in the profession. And I suppose they have to take that attitude if they're going to make it, but it's a drag to the teacher, because you walk in there realizing how little you know. Which is, I think, what a lot of teachers face when they get in front of a class. But be that as it may, that's it. Thank you very much. I appreciate your support. Genuinely, thank you. And because I love